there are cultures within cultures and lots of subcultures. So
Right.
it's not even a blank approach, because even if as I speak, I don't speak representing all African American males even on the West Coast.
And
I
I
don't even
think that's a mistake some people make, right? When we go,
it is.
oh, I met a transgender person in counseling, therefore I'm going to ask them and pick their brain about all things transgender. It's like, well, I'm just one person. Like,
Right, right. And understanding that they can't carry the weight of
right. It
those
would be
particular
inappropriate.
categories that they fall in. It would be inappropriate to put that on them.
Mhm.
But what we can do is continue to dig in on what's their perspective and what is their, how do they see themselves fitting in the world, or how do they see themselves in the particular community in which we're talking. And when they talk about their placement and where they fit in the community, where do they fit? Because we'll always talk about where they fit in the family. We'll do our genogram, and our genogram
Yeah.
will break down, all the map of what their family looks like and what their history has looked like. But where the genogram misses out is we need to do the same type of work, but it needs to be on their perspective with their identity. Where do they fit within their church, their culture? Where do they fit within Blackness, for the lack of a better
Yeah.
term? It will help define some of their struggles even more so as they're navigating and working their way through whatever they may be, whatever we might be working with them on. And
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No,
I
no, no,
was,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it almost sounds like we need to rethink how we teach cultural competence, where it's not we're not teaching to a non-exhaustive list of cultures. Cause I mean, I come from a culture of being bullied on the playground too, being raised by a cop and a teacher that has different influences. And you can't hit them all. Like you can't teach them all. It's almost like we need to rethink how we teach this stuff and go more toward a meeting people where they are, not a trying to fit them into what box I need them to be for my own comfort, which sounds like a much harder job. It's more difficult, I think, when you're individually trying to meet people where they are, but we can't ignore the backdrop either. So I don't know how we do that.
Well, I think you're 100% right, Jake. We have to back up. We got to back up to all of these great things that we have learned, almost to reprogram our approach. And we have a typical approach that we use for the greater amount of clients the greater amount of people that we're dealing with on a regular basis, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't work for everyone. And I think if we reprogram the approach, we'll find that we're able to dig in deeper with not just Black people, with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start digging into topics that people are afraid to talk about. There's all those hidden topics of discussion that this is taboo to talk with someone who's not in my race about. And it's not until we start having those conversations with people outside our race about those things that we've been scared to talk about or uncomfortable to talk about that we can continue to break down walls and see how much more alike we are and how much more productive we can be in finding solutions to our day-to-day issues.
What I'm hearing is that it's going to require more humility on behalf of in our case, the clinician, if we're doing this in a clinical setting, but in broader society, the person who needs to do the learning, which is everybody. We all need to keep learning, but it requires humility and it requires a vulnerability, which I don't know that people are super excited to embrace, because vulnerability comes with risk of what? Pain of being embarrassed or humiliated or just simply not knowing, because it's scary. And then who wants more pain, right? So it's almost like in a way that we're avoiding pain, and while we're avoiding pain, we're also not communicating, and we're isolating, and we're siloing, and then we're digging our heels into these belief systems that are oftentimes incorrect or at bare minimum incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not moving forward. So I'm trying to figure out, I guess, as I'm just thinking out loud here, first of all, where does the fear come from? Because I encounter this with the guns and mental health work that I'm doing with Walk the Talk America, where people just don't want to talk about guns because and it's no fault of their own, they're just ignorant of it. Like, not everybody knows gun culture, no big deal.
Right.
Not everybody knows African American culture, no big deal. Go learn it, right? But there's some inhibition here, some blockage that says, don't go there because you'll be wrong. And if you're wrong, then you're going to be judged or ostracized or something. Wait,
I don't
where does
want to
that
say
come from?
something stupid. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to
yeah.
be wrong. I don't want to be uncomfortable.
Is that
And
really it? I mean, because I'm seeing these in junior clinicians too. I'm sorry if you see me twitching here. I got an ant problem apparently, and I'm just squashing them all over the place, crawling on my legs. It's really gross. But I'm seeing it in junior clinicians and people coming out of school, and even some of our older supervisors in the field who are just not interested in letting their guard down. They're interested in maybe browbeating,
right.
but and this is from like fledgling new graduates. They're like, I'm not here in supervision to learn more. I'm here to have my current worldview validated or verified. And it's like, that's not what this field does.
Right. Well, I think one of the issues with that is so many people that go into the field to heal thyself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wounded healers.
yeah, and they haven't worked through that component yet. So therefore they're still guarded on so many other things. Um, that's just one thing I think that slows us down. But when we can push through, and the key word you said there is being vulnerable. We can figure out how to be vulnerable and open ourselves up to be there. We're going to be so much more empathetic and understanding, and we're going to be we're going to be much better listeners overall, which I think will end up, the result will be greater clinicians, and we'll have such a great toolbox in dealing with all the different types of cultures.
So that's the answer, but what's the how, especially when you're facing a social media culture that's so polarized and binary
and critical?
And yeah, right. And there's the threat of cancel, right? So if I try to say something bold on Twitter and it gets taken the wrong way, which it will because you're limited to characters, then I risk losing all of Zephyr Wellness or something, because people like want to boycott me because I didn't fall into line with this totally undefinable belief system or ideology, by the way. So like, what do we do? How do we do it? Unless we just turn off social media and do it individually. That's what we need to do.
Right. Well, I think, the how is the start of this conversation you and I are having right now. So it starts with the conversation to increase the awareness that it needs to be fixed. So we're identifying that there's some issues here and there are better ways to do it. And then we continue the conversation with coming up with what are the next steps? What are the things that need to be changed? Let's analyze this stuff and let's put it into play and let's shift and start changing how we do it. And then be very critical and be ready to accept criticism without taking it personal moving forward. It's the only way we get there. And this is pretty nebulous because you and I are talking about something that's really, really big and really, really grand, but it falls back to the education system.
Yeah. Does it seem like the target keeps moving for you? For me, it does. It seems like it's like, well, one day, here's the target. The next day, nope, not good enough. Here's the target. And we don't even know who's setting the target, whatever that even means.
The target is always moving. It feels like it is just, you just kind of got to wake up and try to find it and see where it is today. And, you're looking in the same spot it was in yesterday, but chances are it has shifted somehow, some way.
I wonder I don't know what we do about that other than just to try to continue beating the drum of the message that says, hey, it's okay to go,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Teach me, right? As opposed to this assertion of here's how to think, here's what to think. And I think there's a lot of that going on.
There's a whole lot of that going on. When it's so much more powerful when you say, I don't know, I want to learn, teach me, and then let's dig in, because it's interesting with a lot of this stuff and these conversations that I've been having surrounding culture and race. I'm talking from my perspective, but I'm learning more, I think, than I'm even teaching people. And I have a great opportunity to be able to teach people a lot of different things that they didn't know from the feedback they're giving me. But I feel like I'm soaking in more. And there are plenty of times where people they've asked me questions and I said, I don't know. And then I had to go dig in and figure out and learn. that's what we have to do, particularly as a profession. It's okay. I think we tend to think that, well, we're experts. Everyone's expecting us to be expert. Everyone is expecting us to have the answers. And it's okay if we don't.
More podcasts is what I'm hearing. But but that's true. There's a lot of stress on the profession. I don't know how many of our listening audience are professional clinicians versus just random people who just want to hear people talk about stuff. But I think there's a great deal of stress these days with working at home, balancing children, education online, for those of us who are parents, as well as trying to continue holding the safe space for people to come and offload their issues. We're now encumbered with dealing with so much more stress of our own. And I think there used to be a perception, even in our own minds as clinicians, where it was like, okay, I've got a different perspective because I went to graduate school and I got these thousands of hours of training. You can come to me and I'll give you a different angle. But now we're all in the same angle. It's like, well, how do we help ourselves? How do we help each other? And I don't have that answer either, other than just take time to breathe.
Right.
Have you encountered this, especially as an organization leader?
Yeah. And it can be very challenging in trying to take time to because, I think one thing that's very different today than it was, say, 20 years ago is it's hard to turn anything off.
Yeah.
If we're turning things on, turning things off from work when we get home, whatever, there's other things that are turning on.
Yeah.
Our own mental health, as far as clinicians, is in jeopardy because there's so much stimulus constantly coming our way.
And that's irrespective of content. I mean, we can knock, social media for being toxic and all that, but even if it were all full of, rainbows and blue skies and green lights, it's still just a bombardment of sensory overload that our brains simply are not equipped to handle or digest. So we do have to learn to breathe and turn it off. I want to get back to the cultural conversation with regard to the threatening language that we see on Twitter and social media and all this stuff and all the binary hyperbole. Are you, as an organization leader, concerned at all about litigation over not doing the right thing? And I put that in air quotes that the audience can't see because this is audio, but doing the right thing, which is one of those other moving targets where it's like, well, the target here today is this thing, but then tomorrow it might be somewhere else and nobody bothered to tell you, but now you got a lawsuit on your doorstep. Are you concerned about that at all?
Well, you always have to be, running an organization, you always have to do your best to take a look at protecting the organization from a legal standpoint. That's why you have a really good board. So difficult ones, I make sure that everything's documented and run things by the board, that anything that might be even slightly questionable. And that takes a lot of weight off of my shoulders personally. And here at Eddy House, we've got a fantastic board in that aspect. For most organizations, more organizations than not do not have great boards. I've got board members. I've got an attorney on the board who will ask questions that are challenging, but they're always pertinent. So that helps balance that out. And then I'm always making sure that I've got really good, competent people around me. So, I've got a great staff, so they know when to ask the questions, when to, they always know to make sure the documentation is taken care of. Now, with those pieces in place, with strong staff and a really strong board, that alleviates that fear of me constantly thinking about that. So it's not on the forefront of my mind. Usually I'm thinking about services and money. How do I raise enough money to provide the most adequate, or the beyond adequate, the most appropriate services for the individuals in need?
What percent, I don't know if you know these or not, if you're just taking it off the top of your head, but what percent would you say because you're not homeless youth, and you corrected that. I appreciate that, because I wanted to talk about that a little bit. It's 18 to 24, I think you said.
And that is homeless youth. So, yeah.
Right. And the reason it's not under 18 is because those children would ostensibly be cared for by social services, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah, you're right.
So what percentage of your youth that you serve, the young adults, come from foster care or the quote unquote the system, and then end up homeless and then how do you navigate that? Because they're, from my understanding, they're supposed to have some sort of funding